Today, we are going to unpack one of the most incredible stories in American business history. Seriously, it's a saga of genius invention, absolute monopoly power, a government takedown, and then a rebirth that almost nobody saw coming. This is the epic story of AT&T, and it all boils down to one wild question. Think about that for a second. How on earth did one company manage to build an entire nation's phone system from scratch, get broken into pieces by the US government, and then somehow put itself back together again? This crazy cycle of creation, destruction, and reincarnation didn't just change how we talk to each other. It literally built the foundation of the digital world we live in today.
All right, so let's rewind the clock. Our story kicks off in the late 1800s with a single world-changing invention that sparked a revolution. It laid the groundwork for a communications empire that would eventually become known, pretty affectionately actually, as Ma Bell.
What's just mind-blowing is the speed at which this all happened. In just over 20 years, the company went from a single patent to a completely vertically integrated system. I mean, they own the technology, they own the company that made all the phones and switches, and they owned the long-distance network connecting everything. They had all the pieces on the board.
Now this was the masterstroke. Instead of fighting off competitors forever, the new president of AT&T, Theodore Vail, did something brilliant. He basically went to the government and said, "Look, the telephone is a natural monopoly, like a public utility." He invited government regulation in exchange for being the only provider. So, and this is the crucial part, this wasn't some evil monopoly hiding in the shadows. It was a government-approved one, all for the goal of universal service. That regulated monopoly created a constant river of guaranteed cash, and a huge chunk of that money, skimmed from every single phone bill in America, was funneled into one legendary place, Bell Labs, and it would become, arguably, the single greatest innovation factory in human history.
And just look at what they created. Bell Labs gave us the transistor, the tiny switch that is the bedrock of literally every electronic device you own. They invented information theory, which defined the bit and gave us the blueprint for the digital age. Oh, and they also created the Unix operating system and the C programming language, which are pretty much the direct ancestors of the software that runs the internet, your phone, pretty much everything.
But you know, empires don't last forever. By the 1970s, the government started to see things differently. AT&T's total control over everything, local calls, long distance, and all the equipment, wasn't seen as a public service anymore. It was seen as an illegal bottleneck that was choking out all competition. The stage was set for the biggest antitrust battle in history.
So after an 8-year legal war, this was the verdict. It was called the Modified Final Judgment, and it was nothing short of a corporate earthquake. AT&T had to give up its crown jewels, all of its local telephone companies, in exchange for a shot at competing in the brand new, exciting world of computers.
And so, on New Year's Day, 1984, the old world just shattered. The single, unified Ma Bell was gone. In its place was a smaller AT&T, now just a long-distance company, competing against 7 brand new, independent regional companies, the famous Baby Bells. Now, the whole point of the breakup was to create an era of permanent competition. But what happened next, well, it was something almost no one predicted. The children didn't just grow up, they started to get hungry. Just over a decade later, Congress decided to stir the pot again. They passed new legislation designed to tear down the last of the walls, letting local phone companies, long-distance carriers, and cable companies all fight it out in each other's territory. The goal was simple: create way more competition.
But it had the exact opposite effect. Instead of a bunch of new players jumping in, the new law kicked off a feeding frenzy. The Baby Bells immediately started buying each other up at a ridiculous pace. It was a race to get bigger, faster, and it created new giants like Verizon and a supersized version of another Baby Bell, SBC. And this is the most astonishing twist in the entire story. In 2005, Southwestern Bell, or SBC, which had been the smallest of the original Baby Bells, did the unthinkable. It bought what was left of its own parent, the original AT&T Corp., and then it adopted the iconic AT&T name and logo for itself. The child had literally eaten its parent and assumed its identity. Just wild. So with Ma Bell basically put back together, this new AT&T set its sights on an even bigger prize. They weren't content just owning the pipes of communication, now they wanted to own the entertainment that flowed through them. And that led to a massive, debt-fueled gamble on becoming a media titan. The strategy was pretty clear: become a one-stop shop for both your internet connection and your entertainment. They spent almost $50 billion on DirecTV, and then a truly colossal $85 billion on Time Warner, which owned HBO, Warner Bros., and CNN. The idea was to own the road and all the cars driving on it.
But that huge ambition came with a price tag to match. To build this media empire, AT&T's debt just exploded, ballooning to nearly $200 billion. That's a mountain of debt that just became, well, unsustainable.
So, with that mountain of debt threatening to crush the company, they had to pull the emergency brake. They made a hard pivot. They spun off their entire media empire, DirecTV and Warner Media, basically hitting the reset button to save the company and refocus on what they've always done best. So, where does that leave AT&T today? In a way, they're right back where they started. The strategy now is 100% focused on being the absolute best connectivity company out there. They're pouring billions into building out a massive fiber network and upgrading their 5G coverage, doubling down on their original mission, building America's digital roads.
And that brings us to the final, really big question here. The story of AT&T shows us a complete cycle, from one single giant to a bunch of smaller pieces, and now back to just a few massive players. It really makes you wonder. In industries that require enormous scale and infrastructure, from telecom to social media, is this cycle of consolidation just inevitable?